Greetings. What I'd like to do in this video is present a theoretical model and apply it to terrorism and hate crimes. So what I'm going to do is to present violentization theory, a theory that was developed by the sociologist Dr. Lonnie Athens, and apply it to terrorism and hate crimes. So this is a new approach to hate crimes and terrorism. It's based on the theories and the research of Dr. Lonnie Athens and also others that have used this model to study a variety of violent crimes, and it explains the hate process leading up to violent actions, and this approach may also be used to examine individuals, groups, communities, and entire societies. First, I would like to point out, though, that we need research, empirical research conducted with this theory applied to hate crimes and terrorism, that we don't have that to my knowledge, and so this is theorizing, it's applying, and I could be totally wrong, and that's certainly something to consider. But I do want you to take the opportunity to be critical of what I'm presenting here, but to also take it into consideration as a useful approach that deserves not only further research, but further funding. Yes, we need to have research that would actually have practical applications funded. There are basically phases as a person or a group goes through a violentization or becoming violent process. And we'll discuss some of the indicators that have been developed in the 5 stages: brutalization, defiance, violent dominance engagements, virulency, and extreme virulency. The overarching theme that we'll come back to as presented in Lonnie Athens' work on violence is domination. So domination is something that we'll see as a primary motivating factor in the interactions and relationships involved in hate crimes and terrorism. Brutalization is the first phase, and this is where a person or a group is taught how to carry out violent behavior by observing others. And Lonnie Athens has presented this work extensively in his articles ranging from the 1980s all the way to the current time period. So during this initial stage, a person or group are prepared to act in hateful or harmful ways. In other words, a hate script is developed and it is presented and reinforced by a perpetrator, leader, or group. So some of the indicators in brutalization would be, for example, making threats to a person who is going through this brutalization stage, letting them know that if they don't take action or start thinking this way, they themselves could become a victim of a violent crime. Also being horrified. The person's horrified by witnessing other violent crimes. They also are coached to carry out violent crimes. The brutalized person may develop a mentor relationship with someone who can teach them the methods, the rationalizations, and the situations to carry out particular hate crimes or terroristic activities. They are also told that one has a personal responsibility to carry out a hate crime. They are also viewed as being victimized by another group or society. And there are former stories that are brought up of alleged previous criminal acts against the perpetrator group and their friends and family. And also there's the recognition that the person going through the brutalization stage does not have the power to prevent crimes occurring and must gain that. So in the brutalization stage, we have someone who's witnessing, understanding, and being exposed to violence, but this doesn't necessarily mean that they will become violent. The second stage is the defiance stage, where that belief system is presented that supports particular violent behaviors. So in this case, there's an additional justification that becomes integrated into the individual or group's belief system. So in the defiance stage, some of the indicators are that the perpetrators define a specific group as an appropriate target for assault or violence, and the perpetrators present violence as an alternative to address whatever constructed threats have been brought in from the victim group. And the situations are presented where violent behavior is encouraged and labeled appropriate. And the individual or the group makes a decision to use violent behavior in the future. And the perpetrators present a belief system that violence must be carried out for the benefit of the group, for the betterment of the group. And the perpetrators present other types of further justifications for carrying out violence. So in the second stage, the risk for violent acts have increased. But it is the third stage, violent dominance engagements, that focuses on threatening others and carrying out violent acts. And in this situation, we see victims segregated out for hate crimes and violence. We see individuals or groups are directed specifically to carry out specific violent acts. And we see also that when an individual group engages in violence, that they are in essence testing out the consequences and the results, which are being analyzed by the perpetrator group for further information and planning and reorganization of violent activities depending on the result. There is also the threat to punish those who do not engage in violent behavior, and there are clear rewards for engaging in the violent behavior from peer groups, family, and friends. In the fourth stage, virulency, where violent acts and thought processes have already been well established, the person or the group define themselves as dangerous and violent. That, for example, an individual or a small group or a large group may define themselves as being violent, and that violence is viewed as appropriate. And they attempt to instill very high levels of fear among the victim groups due to a threat of violence or actual violence that has taken place. This is done primarily to demonstrate to the perpetrator and the others that the perpetrator can instill that fear and that shame in the victims. Assault is used to demonstrate again and again that the perpetrator has power and control over the victims. And violence is used to humiliate the victims in front of their peers. And the perpetrator group begins to be viewed as more dangerous and violent. And of course, the self-identity is integrated into the violent self. My colleagues and I added a fifth stage, extreme virulency, which was to account for extreme violence that includes such activities of torture, mutilation of bodies, and other acts of brutality. And within this whole system, Lonnie Athens also developed the concept of phantom communities, which is really very relevant as well, because phantom communities are a key for discovering how the conceptualization of violence occurs and how the whole violentization process takes place. So Lonnie Athens described phantom communities basically as sounding boards that people use to make sense of themselves and their situations. We all have phantom communities, and it's extremely relevant to analyze our phantom communities and other phantom communities, especially when we're trying to understand this violentization process. Phantom community also could be viewed as the internal dialogue that people have to make interpretations of situations and then respond accordingly. And in the case of hate crimes, the phantom community would be that voice of community members in that hate crime group that allow, encourage, and support hatred and violence toward a constructed enemy. Athens also pointed out that the person's self-image can change as the phantom others and communities change. And so we can see with the violentization process how nonviolent individuals become dangerous and violent. There's also, of course, the hope that we can implement a deviolentization process where violent individuals or those who are starting to go through the process become deviolentized. Perpetrators may also have different types of self-images within the violent community and the phantom community. And again, to wrap things up really in using this model, the key variable here perhaps is domination. and to analyze how domination is used as the primary motivating factor that drives the self in engaging, understanding, and carrying out violent activities. And this wraps up this video. Thank you.